from RTV6, Indianapolis This Week.
Welcome and thank you for joining us for Indianapolis This Week. The chaos in the City-County Council continues. Council President Stephen Clay is taking steps to try to delay a vote that was scheduled to take place tomorrow to determine whether he'll remain president of the council. Instead of voting tomorrow, the agenda for the council meeting now includes a proposal to send the discussion to a committee at a later date. That's a change from the steps the full council had taken to set up the vote for Monday night. Council Minority Leader Michael McQuillan is reflected as introducing the proposal, but he says he didn't know Clay made any change. Clay is speaking to us for the first time since the lawsuit was filed, alleging he illegally fired 2 employees in the council staff office. He says he remains confident in his future role on the council.
I am excited to move the people's agenda forward. At the end of the day, we were all elected to serve our constituents. And what's on the agenda for this city is far greater than for us to get sidetracked by personal preferences. It's time to govern. It's time to do the people's business. Thanks, everybody.
The council meeting that could determine the future of Stephen Clay as president is scheduled for tomorrow at 7 p.m. We'll have complete coverage on the air and the RTV6 app. Director of National Intelligence Dan Coates says the risk of interstate conflict is higher now than at any time since the end of the Cold War. That's what he told members of Congress during a hearing last week focused on the emerging global threats. Coates addressed the national debt in North Korea. He also joined other intelligence agency heads to convey a unanimous opinion that Russia continues to pose a threat to our democracy.
We expect Russia to continue using propaganda, social media, false flag personas, and exacerbate social and political fissures in the United States.
Intelligence officials warn that 2018 midterm elections are expected to be a target for continued interference. ABC News reports Trump administration officials acknowledged they had not been directed by the president specifically to blunt Russia's influence. Tragedy in Florida. 17 people are dead after a mass shooting inside of a high school in Parkland, Florida. Investigators say the attack lasted 6 minutes. Police say 19-year-old Nicholas Cruz was behind the horrific shooting. The sheriff says Cruz even bought a drink at Subway and stopped at McDonald's after the rampage. The leader of a white nationalist militia called the Republic of Florida said Cruz was a member of his group and participated in exercises in Tallahassee. The shooting has left the Parkland community in mourning. At a vigil Thursday night with at least 1,000 people, some chanted "No more guns." We asked Senators Joe Donnelly and Todd Young what's next in the effort to curb deadly violence in schools.
We have to robustly gather facts so we know exactly what happened and then steel ourselves. This process will steel ourselves to really directly address the mental health issues that were clearly one facet of this, and we want to make sure that people who have mental health issues don't have access to firearms.
Donnelly sent a statement writing, "I am horrified by the shooting in Parkland, Florida. I believe that we should take steps to reduce gun violence while protecting the rights of law-abiding citizens. I've supported measures to keep guns out of the hands of terrorists, criminals, and people with dangerous mental illnesses, including bipartisan legislation to strengthen the background check system. I will review any legislation that comes before the Senate." The first debate in the Republican primary for the U.S. Senate is coming up this week. The focus is on health care, taxes, and the economy. Congressman Luke Messer, Congressman Todd Rokita, and former State Representative Mike Braun are scheduled to take the podium at WIBC at 6 p.m. The debate is sponsored by the Indiana chapter of Americans for Prosperity, a national political operation funded by billionaire industrialist brothers David and Charles Koch. The organization launched a $2 million ad buy last week targeting Joe Donnelly on tax reform. The 2019 legislative session will bring some major changes in leadership at the State House. Senate President Pro Tem David Long announced he'll retire in November. He served 22 years in the Senate and has led the chamber for the last 12. Long's retirement follows the departures of Senators Brent Hirschman and Luke Kenley. The entire chamber will choose a new president after the election in November. Among those already expressing interest in the role is State Senator Jim Merritt. Former First Lady Michelle Obama visited Indianapolis last week to send a message of encouragement to women and girls. She emphasized the importance of finishing what you start and not stopping yourself before you try. Mrs. Obama spoke to a sold-out crowd of 12,000 people at Bankers Life Fieldhouse.
So go to college, get your education, and put yourself in the game. You have to put yourself in the game, and you don't do that without being prepared. But you can't be at the table if you're not prepared.
It's amazing to know that she was an attorney, and that's what I want to be. So it's really cool just to see her point of view and how she got to where she is today.
The event was hosted by the Women's Fund of Central Indiana. It raised $1 million for initiatives supporting improving the lives of women and girls. The deadly opioid epidemic is on the minds of leaders at the State House and on Capitol Hill. They're trying to figure out ways to curb the problem that has claimed more than 42,000 lives nationwide, most recently in 2016. People in one community are taking matters into their own hands. They're sending a message to their neighbors to say no to heroin. The yard signs are popping up around Columbus. Paul Barker says he has distributed 125 of them in various neighborhoods to raise awareness about the opioid epidemic. He's a former addict who's been clean now for 2 years. He says God called him to be a leader on this issue.
We care. We care as a community. The people that I have met, we care. And that should be influenced. Your life is more important than that high.
The signs are popping up as the number of overdose deaths has dramatically increased in Bartholomew County. Last year, 30 people died from opioid overdoses. That's up from 12 in 2016 and 6 the year before. Up next, our political insiders are in. The deadly mass shooting at a Florida high school. What responsibility do our lawmakers have trying to make sure this never happens again? Vice President Mike Pence sat as the Koreans entered for the opening ceremony of the Winter Olympics. Plus, what to expect in the first debate among Republican candidates for the U.S. Senate. That's coming up.
More this month at Honda of Fishers.
Welcome back. Our political insiders are here. Republican Kyle Walker and Democrat Jamar Cobb-Denard. Gentlemen, starting with the school shooting in Florida, the debate over guns seems to be reignited every time this happens. This is happening a lot, it seems, lately. Are we hearing anything new in this debate this time?
I don't think so. And it's time for the debate to end and the action to begin. I've seen some numbers as low as 12 and some as high as 18 school shootings or mass shootings so far this year, and it's just February, the middle of February. We've got to take some action to make sure that this never happens again.
You know, this was a tragedy, obviously, and you know, one thing that this event, along with many of the other events that Jamar mentioned, has in common is that it's premeditated by months and sometimes years. The problem with premeditated acts like this is that it's very difficult for law enforcement or anyone else to find a way to keep weapons out of those folks' hands, whether they're legally or illegally obtained. So it's really a question of mental health and how do we address the mental health issue in this country. Clearly, this gentleman had a problem. The FBI even identified the fact that he sort of, you know, unfortunately slipped through the cracks, which is just, you know, expands the tragedy of all of this.
What is the likelihood that we see substantive debate on this, given the midterm elections that are coming up?
Well, I hope that this is a common theme and narrative and thread through all the campaigns. But I also hope that there's some legislation around it. You know, we just reported here that there were 30 opioid deaths in the last year in Indiana, and I saw a lot of legislation about the opioid epidemic, but very little legislation about curbing gun deaths. And half the number that were killed by opioids in Indiana were killed a few days ago at the school shooting. We've got to make sure that we get not just mental health help, but also guns off the streets and out of the hands of those that can create this kind of carnage.
The problem with what he just said is that heroin's illegal, and it's still, widely used by certain segments of society that causes a tremendous number of problems for us, obviously. The legality of guns, again, is not the issue, just like the legality of heroin is not the issue. It's the acts of individuals that is the problem, and it is mental health, and it is treatment for drug abuse and other factors. But again, it's by talking about the guns, it's talking about the fact or the weapon used rather than the reason behind it being used.
Katie, I saw one report that said that only 22 to 25% of mass shootings were actually committed by somebody that had mental health issues. So yes, mental health is an issue, but if these things are being perpetrated by the use of a gun, the gun is also an issue.
Well, in the Washington Post, in a recent study also said, which is no harbinger of conservative thinking, right? They also stated that there are no new laws that would have prevented any of the tragic mass shootings that had been seen 3 years prior. And so, there's plenty of room for disagreement on this debate. But again, I think one thing that we can all, have a common interest on is that mental health issues are a problem, and we do need to address them.
City-County Council expecting a big vote, some action tomorrow night. What is the proper path forward at this point to get council back on track, away from the distractions it's had?
The council it's been tough and hard-pressed to even get some business done. And that's not a good thing for our city or for our region, and really for the rest of our state. Whether Councilor Clay stays in or Councilor Clay goes, we need a resolution to this matter so we can get back to business.
Yeah, this issue started not because of Councilor Clay. This is a lack of leadership by Mayor Hogsett and by the former president of the council, Maggie Lewis. President Lewis made changes to the committee structure that had historically been there, effectively denying a voice for a large swath of Indianapolis residents. The Republicans, again, this is not about Councilor Clay. This was about fairness and equity on those council committees and being able to represent their citizens. And so I'm sure whatever happens tomorrow will be done in that light, at least from the Republican caucus perspective.
Kyle, there's certainly a rift on the council, and leadership has got to be looked at as a result of what's happening now. But at the end of the day, it's our citizens that are suffering, and we're paying for this. We're paying for this legal battle between Clay and the rest of the council, not just figuratively, not just an opportunity cost, but in legal fees. So we've got to get to the bottom of this and choose a leader that can really unify us and move us forward.
Yep. And the Democrats have a majority on the council, and they have before and since this problem was created. And so if the Democrats see it like you see it, then I assume that they will move forward in this next meeting and things won't be a problem.
Vice President Pence's decision not to stand for the South Korean and North Korean athletes, do you think that was the right move?
Absolutely. I mean, and he didn't avoid her. He actually ignored her purposefully. She is the sister of a brutal dictator in a regime that has caused nothing but problems up and down the peninsula and throughout the world. And further, she's his chief propagandist. And so I think it was entirely appropriate for the Vice President of the United States to completely ignore her.
Vice President Pence, though, has to decide when it's okay to make a demonstration. It's certainly okay to make a demonstration if you don't agree with foreign policy of a country that hasn't been great to its citizens. The same thing about its domestic policy for North Korea. But when you have American citizens that are protesting against what they feel is domestic policy that isn't advantageous to them, but Vice President Pence doesn't want to see that, he's got to decide, is it okay to demonstrate, or is it not okay to demonstrate?
And I think he made that decision fairly clearly. I mean, he chose to ignore a brutal dictator's regime, and I think that's entirely appropriate.
30 seconds left. What will you be listening for in the Republican U.S. Senate debate?
3 key things. 1, how do we get a budget passed? 2nd, immigration. And 3rd, making sure that we get a handle on this gun issue.
Yeah, I think certainly all of the topics that directly affect the United States Senate are on the table. I think one of the important things for this particular debate is for those 3 candidates to distinguish themselves as who can support Hoosiers and the Trump agenda in a way that Joe Donnelly and Nancy Pelosi, Joe Donnelly votes with Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer like 90% of the time. And so, how can they separate themselves from that and show a better path moving forward?
Gentlemen, thanks. Next, rewind the clock and dig in. We're taking you back in time where they're serving up delicious food and memories of the 50s.
Morning, Indiana, all month long.
I'm Erica Fly, and 6 in the City is at a 50s diner where they're serving up some good food and taking you on a trip back in time.
When people walk in, they see Elvis, James Dean, Humphrey Bogart, Marilyn.
The memorabilia.
Phillies, Reubens, cheeseburgers.
And what's on the menu.
We're really known for our grilled tenderloin.
Make for a delicious trip down memory lane.
A lot of younger couples, I want to bring my mom. I want to be my grandmother. And kids even love the place.
Off the beaten path along Brookville Road on Indy's east side.
It's the Rock Cola 50s Cafe. It's been here since 1993.
Longtime friends Dan Irea and Greg Cadozer purchased the 50s Cafe 10 years ago.
We went to high school together, graduated from Beech Grove High School together.
And they were once cooks together. Where'd you work?
The Bonanza.
Now you can find them over a hot grill at their own restaurant.
We cook. One of us is usually cooking when we're here.
There's Hoosier history all around.
Somebody brought in a Cowboy Bob picture.
They even brought back an old-time favorite drink with Indiana roots, Choc Cola.
It's similar to chocolate milk, but it's thinner and sweeter and richer.
At Rock Cola, people have good times.
We seem to put smiles on people's faces.
Remembering old times.
Typically, if we get a customer to come here once, they come back.
The Rock Cola Cafe 50 style backdrop has been popular for photo shoots. The diner has even been featured on national TV shows. We have more information on the cafe at theindychannel.com.
It's another step forward for a measure aimed at saving lives. A House committee passed a bill giving fire departments the option of conducting carbon monoxide tests. The proposal is called Savannah's Law. It's named for Savannah Bettis, an 18-year-old who died in a crash after she and her boyfriend passed out from high levels of carbon monoxide in the car. The bill now moves to the full House.
I would love to find that balance between being able to have homes that are going to be affordable and keep them affordable.
That is a struggle for many new home buyers and owners. Our Amanda Starantino found one community where residents are rolling up their sleeves to make their neighborhood an affordable and desirable place to live.
Change is happening here. This is Christian Park, an East Side neighborhood just minutes from downtown.
Come on in.
And this home is just one example of the change being done.
This is like the most brilliant time to be able to get into that market because there's still a lot of really fantastic homes that can be captured at a really reasonable price.
Harlan Wilson and Enrique Gonzalez bought this foreclosed home in December of 2016. With some work, they were able to move in quickly and settle down into their new neighborhood.
It's possible to work with contractors like ourselves and others to be able to redevelop that.
Harlan and Enrique work as a real estate and contracting team with a goal in mind to lift these communities out of that East Side stigma.
We really feel that that's going to be a catalyst to really get things started over here. So this is the last couple years we've started doing development. We've done a couple flips. Very strategic to pick this area. However, we know that it's a fantastic gamble, especially with Pleasant Run, with the CJC and all that's coming in this area.
It all ties in with the recent push of My Christian Park, an effort to revitalize this neighborhood.
There's a lot of really motivated people here. People who are motivated to show off our assets and to use them more.
Rosalie and Matthew Cronley have lived in Christian Park for 2 years and are part of that movement.
It's a really great group of residents who have gotten together and have really been working hard, not just to showcase our neighborhood, but to position ourselves for future investment and to show that we really are a great place.
Wilson, leading the My Christian Park effort with Enrique, wants to bring more people here to these East Side neighborhoods.
These are small homes that millennials will want. They're easy to take care of. I mean, they could be really brilliant homes and affordable.
With affordability at the top of mind, Harlan and Enrique are leading by example with a doable price tag for home buyers.
This house was developed for a total of $100,000 at this point. This is not a $300,000 house. So we want to prove to people that this is what's possible in these areas and help people to have affordable homes that have been developed.
Join the conversation. Check out Indy This Week on Twitter and be sure to like our RTV6 Facebook page. Up next, we're looking at the 6 things you need to know for this week.
Welcome back to Indianapolis This Week. I'm Lauren Casey. It's time for the 6, so let's take a look at 6 things coming up this week in Indy. Tonight you can cheer on Indy's own Victor Oladipo in the NBA All-Star Game. He's one of the reserve players. Tip time for that game is set for 8 o'clock. Savor Downtown kicks off this week in the Circle City. It's a chance for you to see why Indy restaurants are named in some top national lists. You can try some of the hottest restaurants in our city for discounted prices on specialty items. Savor Downtown runs through March 4th. This President's Day, you can take the kids to the Children's Museum for some fun with history. It's free admission on the holiday, and they have a lot planned for the kiddos, from activities to discovering our state's presidential heritage to a guest appearance by Abe Lincoln. It's the place to be if school is out. We'll celebrate your favorite Tuesday treat each day this week. It's Indy Taco Week. Time to try out some of the best tacos the Circle City has to offer. Now, a number of local restaurants are participating. All the proceeds go to Second Helpings. The Pacers take on the Atlanta Hawks this week, but before the tip time on Friday, you can swing by at City Market. They're hosting a pregame fun with prizes, local beer, and food. You can even get signed up to win a basketball. This event runs from 5 until 6:30. And of course, we want you to stop by and say hi to our team at the RTV6 Education Expo that's this Saturday at the Castleton Square Mall. It's your one-stop shop for all things education. This informational event is going to run from 10 in the morning until 3 in the afternoon. We hope to see you there. That's what's on tap this week in Indy. Back to you.
Thank you, Lauren, and thank you for joining us for Indianapolis This Week. For our entire team here at RTV6, we hope you have a great Sunday.